This is the Media Summit Podcast, brought to you by the 14th Annual Dr. Louis B. O'Donnell Media Summit.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to WNYO 88.9 Oswego, New York, Lakewood Radio your way, and this is episode 2 of the Media Summit Podcast. And here I am with the creator, Lou Borelli. Lou, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Very excited. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Love it.
So for people that don't know you, how would, if you want to give yourself a little background?
Sure. So I graduated from Oswego in 1977. I was a broadcasting comm major. While I was here, I was the manager of the radio station back then. It was called WOCR. I was on the swim team. I was captain, I guess, my senior year. Wrote for the Oswegonian, photographer for the newspaper, and back when we used to publish yearbooks, I was a photographer of the yearbook. And basically, you know, for me, it was all about just trying to get as much experience and have as much fun at the same time.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about being in college with being so indulged and everything?
What I really, so, you know, it's sort of a trick question. I mean, I obviously enjoyed being part of the swim team. I swam from the time I was 5 years old, so it was a big part of my life. But the radio for me was the real creative outlet, because back then, if you consider mid to late 70s when I was here, you know, the whole rock and roll revolution was still kind of kicking off, and the amount of music, the amount of new music that's being put out, and the types of artists that were coming out. I mean, I remember when, you know, I discovered Bruce Springsteen when I was in high school, and all the various bands that you guys still listen to today.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a lot of fun because the program format was fairly free form.
Yeah.
So you got to pick your own music, you got to put your own spin on your shows, and so that was a lot of fun. And I still have friends, lifelong friends from that station.
Definitely do.
Yeah.
I know I do sports a lot, so it's really fun just to kind of go in here and kind of just talk about what I'm feeling, you know, no really set base, just kind of voice my opinion about all the things that are happening. So I hear you have a new company now in Jamaica.
Yes, I was the CEO of broadband home and entertainment for Digicel, which is the largest mobile phone company in the Caribbean, of 15 million customers in 31 countries, from Bermuda all the way down to Central and South America and all the islands. So that's been a very interesting and rewarding experience. It took me back to what I was doing, you know, several years ago, but obviously in different markets with different cultures, different people.
It's a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah. So it was interesting living down there and having that experience. That project is winding up, so I'm actually coming back to the States and working on the next adventure.
Well, what would you say is like the biggest change from graduating in Oswego to where you are now? What would be like the hardest thing to adjust to, in a way?
Well, if you remember, if you can, well, you wouldn't remember, but I do. So back in the day, you know, we were in an analog world. You had, if you're going to play music, you had to physically have either a cassette or a vinyl or a CD. If you were going to talk to somebody, you'd have to pick up a rotary dial phone and make a phone call. There were no cell phones. It was, if you're listening to music, generally you had speakers the size of small refrigerators in your room, and music was blaring. So I was talking to somebody today. The thing that I think is the biggest change is when I walk through this campus in the middle of the day, it's quiet, because everybody has earbuds.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's really engaging. They're on their phone or they're on their game device, and they're just walking back and forth. And, you know, when I was here on a sunny Saturday, you would put out blankets in between Hart and Fennell, and the industrial arts major guys would hook up all these speakers out of the windows of both buildings. And the left building was the left channel, the right building was the right channel. You'd have a big old amplifier and crank it up, and it would be like being at a concert.
Yeah.
It's loud, and it was great, and, you know, a few hundred people were all hanging out listening to music. Now it's a very compartmentalized, individualized type of experience.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not as, to me, they say it's social media. Well, you're social on the media, but you're not necessarily social in real life.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And you know, there's always new technology that people are always putting out, and I feel like there's also, in today's day, there's a lot more music being put out as well, and that would have been great back in the day where people could just socialize. But I think that socializing with music as well is very alive and well today with all these new platforms coming out.
Right. So here's what you have. You have, now that you're digital, our lives are digital. Digitization effectively enables or facilitated mass distribution, because once you're digital and you have access to the internet, you have the ability to distribute your content to virtually anywhere in the globe. You also have the ability to receive and listen to and curate and discover music from anywhere. I think that's great, and I've done my share of it, although I clearly prefer the music that I grew up with. But here's the thing. Sometimes you can have so many options that you can't necessarily make a decision on what do you want to listen to or what do you want to watch. It's like everything sort of comes at you real time, and the choices are almost unlimited. And to me, that creates a whole layer of you have to almost become your own editor, executive editor. If I was using a newspaper as an analogy, you're the publisher and the editor, and you're deciding more about what it is you're going to consume, how much of what you're consuming do you want to believe or not believe, whether it's music or news or sports or whatever. It's a high-class problem to have. There's more and more content being created every day. There's far more opportunities. There's more channels. There's more streams. There's podcasts, which didn't exist.
No.
But what it has done is it's fragmented the markets, the various silos of content, and it makes it that much more difficult for that type of content to be sustainable. Because at some point you have to monetize it. At some point you have to figure out what the revenue model is, and I think that that's still an evolutionary process.
Yeah. And I think as the years go on, it could get even better. I know making music is also very easy these days. People could just start making music whenever they want, which I think is really great. You could produce your own, beats if you want, if you're into like hip hop, and I think that's great. I think it opens up a lot more for creative content as well.
There are far more creators than there were when I was your age. There are far more platforms and opportunities to hear and be heard, but that creates a very fragmented market, and I think that it makes it a bit more difficult for people to find, bands to find their audience to find their music, and I think that is a big challenge. I think one of the things to consider as you go forward is how is all that, how does that curation happen in the future? In other words, are you willing to let AI dictate what you're going to be served because it sort of follows what you do? And does that give you kind of the best options? In other words, is it going to be more of a bird of a feather theory where you just sort of hang with who you like, you listen to what you like, you don't hear alternative options or alternative music or alternative opinions? To me, that's kind of the scary part of AI. I'm not an AI aficionado, but I do think that automating what used to be a human kind of intuition, to me, isn't as exciting.
Yeah, I can.
As an old guy, that's not exciting to me.
So now to the Media Summit. I know, how long has it been around for now?
So this will be the 14th.
14th year.
Yeah.
Now, since the creation of it, what would you say is like your favorite part of doing this? this event?
So I have a few favorite parts, but the one that I'm most, it gets me going the most is I love the fact that it's really a student-originated, student-run event. For those people who don't know, with the exception of Michael Recchi, who's the faculty advisor, the e-board and all the people that work on the summit are students. And that was the vision I had when we first put it together. It took us a couple of years to get there because we had to get it off the ground and make sure it was right.
Process.
But at I think it was show number 3 is when we probably turned over most of the responsibilities to the kids, and since then they've taken it and run with it. And so watching that team come together, you know, participating in the conference calls, and in some cases when I'm here, meetings in person, to see how they're going about taking the topic or the idea and turning it into something real. That's, I mean, that's a real world experience. It takes talent, it takes intellect, it takes teamwork, it takes compromise, negotiation, all of that. And you know, every year we're not disappointed.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I like, and it's hard to put your finger on it because you never know when it's going to happen. Every summit has a surprise. There's something that happens that you didn't quite expect. It
good
could
or bad?
Be usually good. In fact, always good, because we've never really had a bad experience. But what I mean by that is, you know how you put a panel together, right?
Yeah.
Now, you may have what you'd call the rock star or the headliner, who's the most prominent panelist of a particular topic. And, you know, you could have other panelists, but they're not as famous. And, you know, you have 4 panelists, and maybe there's the fourth, whoever the fourth panelist is, you're figuring, you know, whatever. They're accomplished, but nobody really knows them. And generally speaking, one of the panelists turns to be like the actual rock star because of the way they approach the topic, about the passion they show on the thing, or they tell stories that you didn't know anything about from them. You know, I'll give you one specific example. I won't get in trouble because I know all these guys. So we did a sports panel a few years back, and Steve Levy was the headliner, but he hates, this was a weird thing about Steve, he didn't want to moderate. He hates moderating. He would rather be a panelist. And so he was like, you moderate. And I'm like, okay. So it was Steve Levy, Donna Goldsmith, who was a former WWE and NBA executive, John Kutchko, who's a sports anchor in Rochester, and I'm going to forget Jay's last name, Biebman. But here's the thing. So all 4, so it was the first time we had a summit where all 4 panelists were alums.
Okay.
But what we didn't know is that the 3 guys on the panel lived together.
Really?
They were roommates. We never knew. And nobody said anything until we got on stage.
Yeah.
And I'm the moderator. And they're like, oh, by the way, we live together. I'm like, damn, I could have used that in preparation. But so there's always a surprise.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the summit is that I think the topics are not, obviously they're topical, but they appeal to the masses. They're not designed to be targeted to, you know, just comm majors or just people interested. Thing. It's more of a discussion, especially this one, Viral Voices. I think should resonate with everyone on campus and everyone who is passionate about something. Yeah. Because in this day and age of social media and the digitization we were talking about, all voices can be heard now.
Good or bad.
The real question is, who's listening?
Yeah.
And do you choose to listen? It comes back to that whole bird of a feather thing. Are you open to hear alternative views? Are you open to consider different facts? And then for people who are trying to mount a cause, are you paying attention to what they're saying about the cause, or are you being turned off by the noise they're generating? I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation because there is no right or wrong answer, because it's a fairly personal position or point of view. And I think that anybody who comes in the audience will have their own reaction.
Opinions and
And so when we get to the audience Q&A, it becomes a very dynamic situation.
And I like how you said with the viral voices, it's a very broad term, which means anyone could have a voice, anyone could voice their opinion, which is good for students that aren't just comm majors as well, where they can go to this event as well.
Sure.
It opens up more opportunities for them too, which
Absolutely.
I think is very interesting.
In fact, that's a point I'd want to repeat. Anyone who's a student can sign up to work on the Media Summit. And the selection process is pretty simple. Actually, people are selected for the following year by the e-board or the leaders of the current year. So it's a total student thing. And we have a lot of people who come to the meetings and they sign up, and then for whatever reason, they maybe don't go to the second round or something. And a lot of times we hear, it seemed like it was just comm majors. When the fact is, it's a fairly broad representation of the campus. And we work hard to make sure that the e-board more accurately reflects what the campus is, what the campus looks like.
Yeah,
because
you don't want to.
Because you have to be responsive and responsible to the audience in these things. So I feel pretty strongly about that.
And I just interviewed last week Abby and Bonnie, who were there, and they were talking about, like you said before, you like to see the students grow within the process. That's why you like it student run. They were talking about how the greatest, I asked them like what was the best thing they could take out of this, and they said, it really got me to get me more handle on things, more responsible, got me to really be on top of things, which was a great.
It is a big responsibility, and I will say this. So Bonnie's been doing this for 3 years. Abby's been doing it for 2 years. And there may have been one other person that was a 3-year person. And so for the two of them to stick with it and come back and do it again after they had a great summit last year, and to me, that makes me feel good that they feel that it's important enough and they get enough out of it, even after their second or third year, to do it again. And anybody who's listening can have that same experience. Anybody who's a freshman who, obviously couldn't sign up for the summit because we started working on this back in January.
Before.
But anybody who's a freshman who shows up and sees, wow, this would be kind of cool, you can sign up for next year.
Yeah.
There'll be a selection process that starts. It usually starts in January. And I would encourage it. And again, you don't have to be a comm major. You just have to be somebody who wants to get involved with the school. And I guarantee you'll get something out of it. Now, you may decide after 1 year you don't want to do it again. That's cool. Or you may want to come back.
It's not for everybody.
Nah. Doesn't have to be. Or, your time and your interests change and school changes and you may not be able to commit the time. Doesn't matter. We are happy. We're like the Hard Rock. We love all, we serve all.
Now, how did this Viral Voices come to an idea? Was it from the e-board itself?
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. It was the kids. There were a number of topics. They were all sort of focused on social media and activism, and the kids were the ones that came up with the tagline and went about putting together the list of prospective panelists, and so again, this is sort of their thing. So at the time, for most of this, I was living in Jamaica, so I didn't have as much exposure or access to the e-board or the kids. So I'm like I said, I'm very excited because this is probably the least involved I've been in the 14 years. And by involved, I mean just being aware. It's not like I have a lot of contribution because once everybody decides on what they want to do, they just take it and run with it. So I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited for it.
So what would your advice be for students, comm majors or not? What is the importance of coming and observing what is happening?
Well, again, I think it's an opportunity to hear from people that you wouldn't normally have access to. They're talking about a topic that touches everyone. And it's it's a rare opportunity not just to hear from people who are experienced, accomplished leaders in the field, but you also, if you have the nerve, you can get up and ask them questions directly. So I would encourage anyone who shows up to be prepared to participate, because that is where you're able to convert kind of your concerns or your questions into answers, because you can ask them directly and they'll give you an answer.
Yeah, it gives you more real life, kind of like what a taste in the real world is, outside of the college campus, what it's really like, and gives them more hands-on feel, and kind of shows them like what are they stepping into in the real world.
Exactly.
What part are you most excited for this year?
The red carpet.
The red carpet. The red carpet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we have fun with it. Look, it's a great event. It's my favorite time of the year. I love coming back every year. I'll spend Monday and Tuesday in a bunch of classes, both in the comm department and the School of Business. And Wednesday, it's Summit Day, and we've got people in classes and breakout sessions. We have the panelists. We have career connectors, recent alums coming back. It's a great day.
It's a great time.
It's my favorite day of the year.
October 17th. I hope everyone will be there. Lou, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone comes, and I hope it'll be a great time as the students hopefully get more hands-on feel of what's going on today.
Absolutely. Come on out. We got plenty of room for you.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening. You're listening to WNYO 88.9 Oswego, New York, Laker Radio, your way. Thank you so much.